Let's jump ahead and talk about the Lucy Connolly case.
Let's do
This is
that.
very important to this. And I'm sorry to mess our producers around, but we're going to jump ahead to the Lucy Connolly thing because this was a woman who put out a tweet after those horrific murders. There were 3 young girls murdered, and it was incorrectly blamed on an illegal immigrant at the time. But there was so much passion and heat and I guess, emotion around the issue. Obviously, you can imagine 3 little girls killed at a Taylor Swift fancy dress party. She put out a pretty nasty tweet, it's true, but she took it down 4 hours later. But she went to jail. She was going to be for 31 months. She pleaded guilty because she was told that she'd be in jail for 5 years. She'd never see a daughter growing up. So anyway, it's a long story, but she's now out. They've released her. But this is where this goes. And what we're seeing already, James mentioned that the ABS, they already were arguing about how many people are coming into this country or are not. Once you start that argument, you know you've already lost, because if you're worried about how many people are coming in, then it's too many. But tell us about the Lucy Connolly thing, where we're up to now.
Well, Lucy Connolly, as you say, she put up an offensive tweet. She thought better about it. She took it down later on. But somehow, this wound up in Keir Starmer's Britain. The stormtroopers came to the door, and they took her to jail, and she wound up in jail for months and months. As you say, she did plead guilty, but as you say, that's part of the lawfare that they do. They say, and people were, there were so many people who highlighted crimes that migrants and others committed rapes and things like that have gotten smaller, lighter sentences than what she got.
But there are people who were guilty of offences, part of the grooming gang scandal, where thousands of girls across the country were raped or abused, trafficked. Some of them got lesser sentences than this woman for a online post that was taken down after a few hours. I mean, it is crazy. If you were saying this was going to happen 20 years ago, people would tell you you got having some sort of weird fever dream. But it is the reality. She's not alone. There was a bunch of people who got sentences, and very quickly the turnaround in the legal process from being charged to sentence
and off to jail with you.
Record time, and that was to silence dissent. That was sending a message that if you share, even on your own Facebook page or X, a thought that is about not pro-migration, that is critical of illegal immigrants, then you might get a knock at the door. And never mind going to jail, just having the cops at your door, the legal process, the cost. I mean, nobody wants to face that.
Well, let's have a listen to Lucy Connolly. She's been released now. She's claiming to have been Keir Starmer's first political prisoner.
Have you been Keir Starmer's political prisoner?
Absolutely. And me and several other people. Like I said, it's important to remember that it wasn't just me. He needs to practice what he preaches. I think, he's a human rights lawyer, so maybe he needs to look back at what people's human rights are, what freedom of speech means, and what the laws are in this country.
And what Rita mentioned, which is chilling about this is happening here. We have an e-safety commissioner so what the left are terrified of is the fact that people criticise their policies on social media. That's what it's all about. Forget all this about child safety and all the rest. That's all nonsense. What's going on around the world, the global left are terrified. The global left who believe in open borders, there shouldn't be any borders, everyone should be able to go wherever. They are terrified of people, you, me, anybody else who goes on social media and complains about their policies. Here in Australia, as I said, we've already got the ABS quibbling about the actual numbers of people coming into this country. How do we know how many people are coming to this country? What we see is increased traffic jams. What we see is fewer housing. What the kids see is less chance to get a rental, long queues for rentals or homes. So what do the left do? They don't try and fix the problem. They try and silence the dissent. And that's what we're going to be seeing in this country with the e-safety commissioner kicking in with all this banning this and banning that and misinformation or whatever, under 16-year-old bans. They are trying to silence dissent, James.
Well, it's not only about silencing dissent, because the silencing dissent is part of a broader project. You see where Britain is now and you see where Australia is going. The British establishment, the elite, if you want to call them that, I increasingly dislike that word, has a real serious distrust and, in fact, actually hatred, I think, for the British people. They're terrified of the British people. They're terrified of what they think. They're terrified of what they stand for and what they represent. And they want to remake the country. And the same thing is essentially happening here. And they want to remake it in a way that is fundamentally better for labor. And, you know, it comes in to a whole lot of different, you know, there's all these different sort of strands that have been running through our culture for the last 50, 60 years, you know, multiculturalism, you know, laborism, all these different sort of things. And the end result here is, you know, it's a fundamental change that the country is undergoing, and we've never really had a referendum on it. I mean, it's like if you had a referendum on population, you would have 70, 80% of people saying, cut it to, you know, 0.5% of whatever your population is.